Wu was 22 years old when he first saw the stars from space. He stood near the observation window of the training vessel Horizon's Edge and watched the darkness spread out before him like an endless ocean. Small dots of light filled the view. Some were stars, some were distant planets, some were ships moving through the void. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. It was everything he had dreamed about since he was a small boy. He had joined the United Earth Fleet 6 months ago. His mother had cried when he left. His father had said nothing but saw the pride in his eyes. His younger sister had made him promise to come back home. He had promised. He had meant it. Now he stood in the corridor of the training ship, wearing his gray cadet uniform, wondering if he had made the right choice. The Horizon's Edge was not a combat vessel. It was a school ship designed to teach young cadets the basics of space travel, navigation, and emergency procedures. There were 47 cadets on board, along with 12 officers and crew members. Most of the cadets were young, eager, a little bit scared. His friend walked up beside him, was tall and thin, with messy black hair and a smile that never seemed to leave his face. They had met during basic training on Earth and had become close friends. Was always joking, always laughing, always finding something funny even in the hardest situations. "You look worried," said. "I am not worried," replied. "Your face says different things." Shook his head. "I am just thinking." "About what?" "About home, about why I am here, about whether I am good enough for this." Put his hand on shoulder. "You are good enough. You finished top of our class in emergency response training. You can handle anything." Wanted to believe him. He wanted to believe that all those months of training had prepared him for whatever waited in the darkness of space. But deep inside, a small voice whispered doubts. What if something went wrong? What if he failed? What if he let everyone down? The ship's intercom crackled to life. Captain Bora's voice filled the corridor. She was a stern woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. The cadets respected her. Some of them feared her. She had served in the fleet for 30 years and had seen things that none of them could imagine. "All cadets report to the main deck for patrol briefing. We will be entering the outer sectors in 2 hours." And exchanged looks and started walking toward the main deck. The corridors were filled with other cadets moving in the same direction, saw near the front of the group. She was small and quick, with short hair and determined eyes. She was one of the best pilots in their class. Behind her walked a quiet young man who rarely spoke but always listened. He was studying to become a medic. They gathered on the main deck, standing in neat rows as Captain Bora addressed them. She explained that they would be passing through a sector that had seen some activity from unknown vessels in recent weeks. It was probably nothing. Probably just traders or miners passing through, but they needed to stay alert. "This is a training mission," Captain Bora said. "But space does not care about training. Space does not give warnings. You must always be ready." Felt his heart beat faster. He tried to stay calm. He told himself that the captain was just being careful. There was no real danger. This was a training ship. Nothing bad would happen. 2 hours passed slowly. Went to his station in the emergency response bay. His job was to monitor the life support systems and be ready to help if anything went wrong. It was not an exciting job, but it was important. Lives depended on those systems working correctly. Was stationed nearby, checking the emergency equipment. Was on the bridge learning navigation from one of the senior officers. Was in the medical bay organizing supplies. Everyone had their place. Everyone had their role. The ship entered the outer sector. The stars looked the same as before. The darkness was just as deep. For a while, nothing happened. Began to relax. He thought about what he would eat for dinner. He thought about the message he wanted to send to. He thought about sleeping in his small bunk later that night. Then the alarm started. Red lights flashed across every corridor. The sound was loud and sharp, cutting through the silence like a knife. Jumped to his feet, his training taking over before his mind could catch up. He looked at his monitor. Warning signals appeared everywhere. Unknown vessels approaching, a voice announced over the intercom. All hands to battle stations. Felt cold. Battle stations. This was a training ship. They had no weapons. They had no shields. They had nothing but basic emergency systems and a hull designed for travel, not combat. The first blast hit the ship like a giant fist, was thrown against the wall. His head struck metal and for a moment everything went white. He heard screaming. He heard metal tearing. He smelled smoke. When his vision cleared, he saw chaos. The emergency bay was filled with smoke and sparks. Panels had fallen from the ceiling. Wires hung loose, shooting electricity into the air. And through the smoke, he saw lying on the ground, not moving. Crawled toward his friend. Blood covered his forehead, but he was breathing. He was alive. Another blast shook the ship. This one was closer. Heard the hull groan, the metal bending under pressure. Warning lights changed from red to orange. Breach warnings. They were losing air somewhere on the ship. He had to move. He had to do something. Grabbed under the arms and started pulling him toward the corridor. His muscles screamed with effort, was heavier than he looked, but did not stop. He could not stop. His friend needed him. In the corridor, he saw other cadets running, some crying, some bleeding. Officers shouted orders that no one seemed to hear. The ship was dying around them, and everyone knew it. Saw stumble out of a side passage. Her left leg was bent at a wrong angle, and she was using the wall to stay upright. Her face was pale with pain, but her eyes were still sharp. She gasped, "The bridge is gone. Captain Bora is dead. We have to get to the escape pods." Dead, the word hit like another blast. Captain Bora was dead. The bridge was gone. No one was in command. No one was coming to save them. He looked at, still unconscious in his arms. Somewhere behind him he heard calling for help. At that moment made a choice. He did not know if it was the right choice. He did not know if he was strong enough or brave enough or smart enough. But he knew one thing with perfect clarity. He would not leave them behind, any of them. The smoke was thick and black. It burned his eyes and filled his lungs with every breath. He coughed hard, trying to clear his throat, trying to see through the darkness. The emergency lights flickered on and off, painting everything in shades of red and shadow. Was still unconscious. Had dragged him against the wall, away from the sparking wires and falling debris. He needed to think. He needed a plan. But the screaming and the explosions and the groaning of dying metal made it hard to focus. Leaned against the opposite wall, her broken leg hanging useless below her. Her face was wet with sweat, and her breathing came in short, painful gasps. But she was still alert, still fighting. "The main escape pods are on deck 4, she said through gritted teeth. "But the lifts are down. We have to use the emergency stairs." Nodded. Deck 4 was 2 levels up. In normal conditions, it would take a few minutes to get there. But these were not normal conditions. The ship was breaking apart. Fire was spreading. And he had 2 injured friends who could not walk on their own. "Can you move?" he asked. She tried to push herself off the wall and immediately cried out in pain. Her leg could not hold any weight. She shook her head, angry at her own weakness. "I will carry," said. "You hold on to my shoulder, we move together." "You cannot carry both of us. It is too far. You should go ahead, find help, send someone back." "No," his voice was firm. "I am not leaving you. Either we all go or none of us go." Stared at him for a long moment, then she nodded slowly. "You are crazy," she whispered. "Maybe," replied, "but I made a promise." He bent down and lifted onto his back. His friend was heavy and his muscles complained immediately, but he ignored the pain. He stood up straight and held out his arm too. She grabbed his shoulder and pulled herself up, balancing on her one good leg. They started moving. The corridor was a nightmare. Pieces of the ceiling had collapsed, blocking the path in some places. Bodies lay on the ground, some moving, some still. Tried not to look at them. He tried not to think about who they were, whether he had eaten breakfast with them that morning, whether they had families waiting for them on Earth. He focused on one thing only, the next step, and then the next, and then the next. They reached the emergency stairs after what felt like hours. The door was stuck, bent by the force of the explosions. Set down carefully and grabbed the handle with both hands. He pulled with everything he had. His arms shook. His back screamed. The door did not move. He pulled again, nothing. "Let me help," said. She hopped forward and grabbed the handle beside him. Together they pulled. The metal groaned. Slowly, centimeter by centimeter, the door began to open. Finally, there was enough space to squeeze through. Picked up again and pushed through the gap. Followed, crying out as her broken legs scraped against the door frame. The stairs were dark. The emergency lights had failed here, and only the faint glow from his wristband showed the way. He climbed slowly, one step at a time, feeling his legs burn with exhaustion. His weight pressed down on him like stones. Behind him hopped from step to step, holding the railing with both hands. She did not complain. She did not ask to stop. She just kept moving, one painful hop at a time. They passed the first landing, one more level to go. Then heard it, a voice calling from below. "Help, please, someone help." He stopped. He knew that voice. It was. Heard it too. Her eyes widened. He is still alive. He must be trapped. Looked up at the remaining stairs. So close. They were so close to safety. If he kept going, he could get into the escape pods. He could save 2 lives. That was something. That was more than most people could do. But was down there, who never raised his voice, who always helped others, who wanted to be a healer. "Wait here," said. He sat down on the landing. "I will be back. The ship is breaking apart. You do not have time." "Then I will be fast." He did not wait for her to argue. He turned and ran back down the stairs, jumping over gaps, sliding past debris. His legs felt like fire, but he did not slow down. He found on the level below, trapped under a collapsed support beam. The beam was heavy, pressing down on his chest. His face was gray and his breathing was shallow. Whispered, "You came." "Of course I came." Grabbed the beam and tried to lift it. It barely moved. He tried again, pushing with his legs, straining every muscle in his body. The beam shifted a little, then a little more. "Push yourself out," gasped. "Now while I hold it." Used his arms to drag himself forward. It was slow, too slow. Felt his strength failing, felt the beam starting to slip from his grip. "Keep going," he said through clenched teeth. "Almost there." Pulled himself free just as let go. The beam crashed back down, hitting the floor with a sound that shook the walls, but was out. He was free. Helped him stand. His legs worked, though he moved stiffly. Together they climbed back up the stairs. Every step was agony, every breath was a struggle, but they kept going. When they reached and felt a moment of relief, they were still there, they were still safe. "One more level," he said. "We can do this." He picked up again. The weight felt heavier now, almost impossible, but refused to stop. He climbed the last flight of stairs with supporting beside him. They reached deck 4. The corridor here was in better condition, less damaged by the attack. Could see the escape pod bay at the end of the hallway. The doors were open. Lights flickered inside, showing rows of small pods ready for launch. They had made it, almost. They moved down the corridor as fast as they could. 50 meters, 40, 30. Then the wall next to them exploded. Fire and metal flew through the air, was thrown to the ground, landing on top of him. His ears rang. His vision blurred. He could not hear anything except a high, painful noise inside his head. Slowly, painfully, he pushed himself up. He looked around. Was lying nearby, unconscious but breathing. Was sitting against the wall, holding his arm, which was bent in a wrong way. The explosion had opened a hole in the side of the ship. Through the hole, could see the darkness of space, held back only by the emergency force field that flickered dangerously. The force field would not last long, maybe minutes, maybe less. 20 meters to the escape pods. Stood up, his body screamed at him to stop, to rest, to give up. But he did not listen. He picked up first and carried him toward the pods. He put him inside one of the open pods and went back for. He carried her too, his arms shaking so badly he could barely hold her. He put her in the same pod. Then he went back for. "I can walk," said weakly. "Help me up." Pulled him to his feet, and together they stumbled toward the pod. 10 meters. 5. The force field behind them flickered and died for a moment. Air rushed toward the hole, pulling at them like invisible hands, held onto and pushed forward. 3 meters. 2. He shoved into the pod, was waking up, looking around with confused eyes, was still unconscious but safe inside. Reached for the pod controls to start the launch sequence. His fingers touched the buttons. And then the ceiling collapsed. A heavy metal beam struck him across the back, driving him to his knees. Pain exploded through his body, worse than anything he had ever felt. He could not breathe. He could not move. His vision went dark around the edges. He fell forward, half inside the pod, half outside. The last thing he heard was screaming his name. The pain was everywhere. It filled his body like water filling a cup, rising higher and higher until there was no room for anything else. He could not feel his legs. He could not feel his arms. He could only feel the terrible pressure on his back and the cold spreading through his chest. He tried to open his eyes, but the darkness was too heavy. It pressed down on him, pushing him deeper into a place where there was no sound, no light, no time. Just pain and cold and the distant echo of voices he could not understand. Somewhere far away was calling his name. He wanted to answer her. He wanted to tell her that he was okay, that everything would be fine. But his mouth would not move. His lungs would not fill with air. He was sinking, falling, drifting away from everything he knew. Is this what death feels like, he wondered, this quiet darkness, this endless falling? He thought about his mother. She would cry when she heard the news. She would blame herself for letting him go, even though it had been his choice. He wished he could tell her that it was not her fault. He wished he could hold her one more time. He thought about his father, the proud man who never said much but always showed his love through actions, teaching how to ride a bicycle, staying up late to help him study, standing at the door on the day left for training, his face hard as stone but his eyes wet with tears he would not let fall. He thought about his little sister who looked up to him like he was some kind of hero. She had made him promise to come home. He had promised. He had broken that promise. "I am sorry," he thought. "I am so sorry." But even as the darkness pulled at him, something else was happening. Hands were grabbing him, pulling him, dragging him forward. He felt movement, though he could not see it. He felt warmth, though he could not explain it. And then suddenly, the darkness was not so dark anymore. Was above him, her face filled with terror and determination. Her hands were under his arms, pulling him fully inside the escape pod. Blood covered her fingers. His blood, he realized distantly. "Stay with me," she was saying. Her voice sounded strange, like it was coming from underwater. "You have to stay with me. Do not close your eyes." But his eyes were so heavy. Keeping them open felt like trying to hold up the sky. Appeared beside. His arm hung at a wrong angle, but he was using his other hand to examine its back. His face went pale when he saw the damage. His spine whispered. The beam hit his spine. "I do not know if." "Do not say that." His voice was sharp, angry. "He saved us. He saved all of us. We are not letting him die." Wanted to tell them it was okay. He wanted to tell them that he was not afraid, but the words would not come. Nothing would come except the cold and the dark and the slow fading of everything. The escape pod shook as activated the launch sequence. Through the small window, could see the horizon's edge falling away, fire and smoke pouring from its wounds. Other escape pods were launching too, small dots of light against the endless black. Then the ship exploded. The blast wave hit their pod like a giant hand, sending it spinning through space. Felt himself thrown against the wall and new pain shot through his broken body. But the pain was good, he thought dimly. Pain meant he was still alive. When the spinning stopped, the ship was gone. Nothing remained except debris floating in the darkness. Metal pieces, broken panels, and silence. Terrible, empty silence. 47 cadets had been on that ship, 12 officers and crew. How many had escaped? How many were floating in the cold void right now, trapped in pods like this one, hopping for rescue? How many were dead? Was working on injuries, doing what little he could with the basic medical supplies in the pod. He applied bandages. He gave something for the pain. He spoke in a calm, quiet voice, telling that help was coming, that the emergency signal was broadcasting, that everything would be okay. Did not believe him, but he appreciated the lie. Was awake now. His head was bandaged and his eyes were unfocused, but he was alive. He looked at with something like horror on his face. "You carried me," said slowly. "You carried me through all of that." Tried to smile, but his face would not cooperate. "You are heavier than you look," he managed to whisper. Laughed, but it sounded more like a sob. Tears ran down his cheeks, mixing with the dried blood on his skin. "You stupid, brave fool," said. "You should have left me. You should have saved yourself." "Could not," whispered. "You are my friend." The pod drifted through space for what felt like hours. Maybe it was hours. Maybe it was days, could not tell anymore. Time had become strange, stretched, and compressed at the same time. He drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes hearing his friends talk, sometimes hearing nothing at all. He dreamed of home. He dreamed of the beach near where he had played as a child. He dreamed of his mother's cooking, the smell of rice and soup filling the small kitchen. He dreamed of his father's hand on his shoulder, warm and strong. And he dreamed of stars. Billions of stars stretching out forever in every direction, beautiful and terrible and endless. When he woke, was holding his hand. Her broken leg was splinted now, wrapped in bandages from the med kit. Her eyes were red from crying, but she managed a small smile when she saw him looking at her. "A rescue ship found our signal," she said. "They are coming. You are going to be okay." Was not sure he believed her. His body felt wrong, broken in ways that might never be fixed. But he squeezed her hand as hard as he could, which was not very hard at all. "Did everyone make it?" he asked. Smile faded. She looked away and saw the answer in her silence. "Some pods launched," she said finally. "But not all of them. The attack was too fast. Too many people were trapped on the ship when it—" She did not finish. She did not need to. Closed his eyes. He thought about the faces he would never see again. The cadets who had dreams and families and futures that were now gone. It was not fair. None of it was fair. But was alive, was alive, was alive. He had saved 3 lives. Maybe that was not much compared to the lives that were lost, but it was something. It had to be something. The rescue ship arrived an hour later. Watched through the window as the massive vessel approached, its lights cutting through the darkness like hope made visible. A docking tube extended toward their pod, connecting with a soft click. Medical teams rushed inside. They put on a stretcher and connected him to machines that beeped and hummed. They spoke in quick, urgent voices about damage and surgery and chances. He caught fragments of their words: severe spinal trauma, multiple organ damage, critical condition, experimental treatment required. Was beside him as they carried him onto the rescue ship. She was crying again, but she kept her hand on his arm, refusing to let go. "You are a hero," she told him. "Do you understand? You saved us. You saved all of us." Did not feel like a hero. He felt tired. He felt broken. He felt scared of what was coming next. But as the medical team wheeled him into the surgery bay, he managed one last look at, one last nod, One last small victory against the darkness that was trying to claim him. Then the doctors put him under, and everything went quiet. The first thing noticed was the light. It was soft and warm, nothing like the harsh red emergency lights of the horizon's edge. It came from somewhere above him, gentle as morning sunshine through a window. The second thing he noticed was the sound. A steady beeping, slow and rhythmic, machines working, life support systems, the quiet hum of electronics doing their job. The third thing he noticed was that he was not in pain. He opened his eyes slowly, blinking against the brightness. The ceiling above him was white, clean, medical. He tried to turn his head and found that he could. He looked to the left and saw monitors displaying numbers and graphs he did not understand. He looked to the right and saw a window, and through it, a familiar blue sky. Earth, he was on Earth. Memories came flooding back. The attack, the fire, the smoke, carrying through burning corridors, his broken leg, trapped under the beam, the ceiling collapsing on his back, the darkness that had tried to swallow him whole. He tried to sit up and found that his body responded, though slowly and stiffly. He looked down at himself and saw new scars. His arms had thin lines running along them, the marks of surgery. His chest was covered in sensor pads, and when he moved his legs, they moved too. He could move his legs. The door opened, and a woman in a white medical coat walked in. She was older, with gray hair pulled back in a neat bun, and kind eyes that crinkled when she smiled. "You are awake," she said. "We were beginning to wonder when you would join us." "Where am I?" His voice was rough, like he had not used it in a long time. "Seoul Medical Center, the best facility for reconstructive biotech in the United Earth system." She walked to his bedside and checked the monitors. "You have been asleep for 3 months, Cadet Wu. Your body needed time to heal." 3 months. The number hit him like a physical blow. 3 months of his life, gone in what felt like a single long nightmare. "My friends," he said, "are they?" "All alive and recovering." The doctor smiled again. "They have been here almost every day, waiting for you to wake up. In fact, I believe one of them is in the waiting room right now." She pressed a button on her tablet, and a few minutes later the door opened again. Walked in. She was using a cane, but she was walking. Her leg had healed, though could see she still favored it slightly. Her hair was longer now, and there were dark circles under her eyes. But when she saw him awake and sitting up, her face transformed with pure joy. She said his name like a prayer, like she could not believe it was real. She crossed the room quickly and threw her arms around him, holding him tight. He held her back. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They did not need to. The embrace said everything. When finally pulled away, there were tears streaming down her cheeks. But she was smiling, really smiling, in a way he had not seen since before the attack. "You stupid, wonderful fool," she said, echoing words from what felt like a lifetime ago. "Do you know what you put us through? 3 months of waiting. 3 months of not knowing if you would ever open your eyes again." "I am sorry," said. "I did not mean to worry you." "Worry me?" Laughed through her tears. "You almost died. You should have died. The doctors said they had never seen anyone survive injuries like yours. They had to rebuild half your spine, repair 3 organs, and replace who knows how much bone and muscle. You are basically a miracle." Looked down at his hands. They looked the same as before, but he knew now that they were different. Parts of him had been replaced with biotech, living metal and synthetic tissue that the doctors had grown specifically for him. He was still human, but he was also something more. "How do you feel?" asked, settling into a chair beside his bed. Considered the question carefully. He moved his fingers, his arms, his legs, everything worked. There was some stiffness, some slowness, but no pain, no weakness. "I feel okay," he said. "Better than I expected." "The biotech is amazing," said. "Has been reading about it nonstop. He says you will be stronger than before once you finish recovery. Faster healing. Better reflexes. Something about the synthetic nerve connections being more efficient than natural ones. Did not know how to feel about that. He had just wanted to survive. He had not asked to become something different. But he was alive. His friends were alive. That was what mattered. What about the others? He asked. The other cadets from the horizon's edge. Smile faded. She looked down at her hands. 17 made it to escape pods, she said quietly. 17 out of 47, plus 4 crew members, the rest. She did not finish. She did not need to. 26 cadets, 8 crew members, Captain Bora, all gone. Felt the weight of those numbers pressing down on him. So many lives lost. So many futures cut short. And here he was, alive, rebuilt, given a second chance that so many others would never have. It was not your fault, said, reading his expression. You saved more people than anyone else that day. If it was not for you, and I would all be dead. You carried us through fire and explosions and collapsing metal. You gave everything you had, and then you gave more. It does not feel like enough. I know, took his hand. It never feels like enough, but it is. It has to be. They sat in silence for a while. Outside the window, clouds drifted across the blue sky. Life went on, indifferent to the tragedies that had happened far away in the darkness of space. The door opened again, and this time and walked in together. His head had healed, though a small scar remained near his hairline. His arm was in a sling, but he was smiling widely when he saw sitting up. He is awake, shouted, running across the room. He grabbed in a bear hug, nearly pulling him off the bed. I knew you would make it. I told everyone. I said, Wu does not give up. Wu does not quit. You never said that, observed dryly. You cried for a week. I had something in my eye. For 7 days it happens. Despite everything, laughed. It hurt a little, muscles that had not been used in months protesting the movement. But it felt good. It felt like coming home. They talked for hours. They told everything that had happened while he was sleeping. The investigation into the attack. The memorial service for those who had been lost. The changes that the fleet was making to prevent something like this from ever happening again. And they told him something else. Something that made him stop and stare, unable to believe what he was hearing. You are famous, said. Really famous. The whole world knows your name. What do you mean? Pulled out a small tablet and showed him the screen. News articles, interviews, official statements from the United Earth government, all of them mentioning the same name over and over again. Wu, the cadet who carried his injured friends through a burning ship, the young man who refused to leave anyone behind, the hero of the horizon's edge. Did not know what to say. He had not done it for fame. He had not done it to be called a hero. He had just done what needed to be done. There is more, said quietly. But we should let you rest first. You just woke up. There is time for everything else later. Looked at his friends. He saw the excitement in their eyes, the secret they were holding back, but was right. He was tired. The 3 months of sleep had helped his body heal, but his mind still needed time to catch up with everything that had happened. Tomorrow, he said, tell me tomorrow. They agreed, though could see how hard it was for them to wait. They said their goodbyes and promised to return in the morning. When they were gone, lay back against his pillow and stared at the ceiling. The soft light, the gentle beeping of machines, the quiet hum of a world that had kept turning while he slept. He was alive, he was changed, and apparently he was famous. But none of that mattered as much as one simple truth. He had kept his promise, not the promise to come home. That one was still waiting, still needing to be fulfilled. No, this was a different promise. A promise he had made to himself in a burning corridor, surrounded by smoke and death and chaos. He had not left them behind, any of them. And that, he decided, was enough. The morning came slowly, sunlight creeping across the hospital room like a careful visitor. Had not slept much during the night. Too many thoughts, too many memories, Too many questions about what came next. When arrived, she was not alone, and walked in behind her, their faces bright with barely contained excitement. And behind them came two more visitors. A tall man in a fleet admiral's uniform, his chest covered with medals and honors, and a woman in civilian clothes, carrying a small device that recognized as a recording unit. "Cadet Wu," the admiral said, his voice deep and formal. "I am Admiral Park of the United Earth Fleet Command. It is an honor to finally meet you." Tried to sit up. His body was still recovering, still slow and uncertain, but he managed to face the admiral properly. Old training habits were hard to break. "Sir," he said, "the honor is mine." Admiral Park shook his head. "No, young man, the honor is definitely mine." He walked to the side of his bed and looked down at him with something that might have been wonder. "I have served in the fleet for 40 years. I have seen courage in many forms, but what you did on the horizon's edge, that was something special." "I just did what needed to be done, sir. Anyone would have done the same." "That is where you are wrong," the admiral's voice softened. "We reviewed the recordings from the surviving escape pods. We interviewed every survivor. We know exactly what happened on that ship. And I can tell you, not everyone would have done what you did. Most people would have saved themselves first. Most people would have left the injured behind, telling themselves it was the only logical choice." He paused, letting the words sink in. "But you did not. You carried 3 people through fire and death and impossible odds. You went back for your friend when every second counted. You pushed them into the escape pod even as the ship was collapsing around you, and you nearly died for it." Did not know what to say. He looked at his friends, was crying again, silent tears running down her cheeks. Had his hand on shoulder, both of them watching with expressions of pride that made his chest feel tight. "That is why," Admiral Park continued, "the United Earth Council has made a decision, and that is why I am here today." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object. It was a medal, golden and shaped like a star, with the symbol of Earth at its center. But it was more than just a medal. Recognized it from his history lessons. Every cadet knew what it was. The Star of Humanity, the highest honor that could be given to any citizen of Earth. An award reserved for those who showed the greatest courage, the deepest sacrifice, the truest representation of what it meant to be human. In the entire history of the fleet, only 11 people had ever received it. "Wu," Admiral Park said formally, "by order of the United Earth Council, you are hereby awarded the Star of Humanity for your actions during the attack on the horizon's edge. Your name will be entered into the honor archives, preserved for all time as an example of human courage and compassion." He pinned the medal to his hospital gown above his heart. The medal was cool against his skin. The woman with the recording device stepped forward. "This is being broadcast live to every settlement in human space," she said quietly. "Billions of people are watching right now." Billions. The number was too large to understand. Had grown up in a small apartment inn. His world had been his family, his friends, his dreams of the stars. Now billions of people knew his name. Billions of people were watching this moment. He did not know what to feel. Pride, maybe. Embarrassment. Gratitude. Grief for those who had not survived. All of these emotions mixed together until he could not separate them anymore. "I do not deserve this," he said finally. "There were others who showed courage that day, others who did not make it." "And they will be remembered too," Admiral Park said. "But you are alive, you are here. And sometimes the universe gives us the chance to carry the memory of the fallen forward. That is your job now. Not just to be a hero, but to be a reminder of what we can be at our best." After the Admiral left, showed her tablet. News feeds from across human space were filled with his face, his name, his story. But there was something else too, something unexpected. "Messages from aliens. The other species have been watching," explained. "The Trade Guild sent an official statement praising your actions. The Science Collective is requesting permission to study your case as an example of human behavior under pressure. And there are dozens more from smaller groups and individual alien citizens. Scrolled through the messages with disbelief. He had never really thought about how aliens saw humans. To him, they had always been distant figures, strange beings from far-off worlds that he would probably never meet. But apparently they had been watching, and what they saw surprised them. One message in particular caught his attention. It was from a merchant, written in careful, formal English. "We have traded with humans for 30 years. We thought we understood your species, efficient, clever, sometimes reckless. But this event has changed our perception. Your people do not abandon each other. Even in the face of certain death, you reach back for those who have fallen. This is not logical, this is not efficient, but it is something we have rarely seen in the galaxy, something valuable, something worth studying, something worth admiring." Read the message 3 times. Each time he felt something shift inside him, a new understanding of what his actions meant. Not just to himself, not just to his friends, but to everyone who watched. Humans did not give up on each other. That was the message. That was what he had proven without even meaning to. 2 weeks later was strong enough to leave the hospital, and were there to help him walk out the front doors. His legs still felt strange, the biotech nerves firing slightly differently than his old ones. But he was walking. He was breathing. He was alive. Outside, a crowd had gathered. Hundreds of people, maybe thousands, all waiting to see him. They cheered when he appeared, their voices rising like a wave. Some held signs with his name. Some just clapped and smiled. Stopped at the top of the steps and looked out at all of them. These strangers who had come to honor him. These people who saw something in his actions that he was still struggling to understand. Behind the crowd, he saw 3 familiar faces pushing through toward the front. His mother, his father, his sister. They broke through the crowd and ran toward him. His mother reached him first, throwing her arms around him with a cry that was half laughter and half sob. His father was right behind her, his strong hands gripping shoulders, his eyes wet with tears he no longer tried to hide. And Little, who was not so little anymore. She crashed into him with the force of all the worry and fear and hope she had carried for 3 months. "You came home," she whispered against his chest. "You promised and you came home." Held his family close. The crowd kept cheering. The cameras kept recording. Somewhere out there, billions of people were still watching. But in that moment, none of it mattered. Not the medal, not the archives, not the fame or the aliens or the messages from across the galaxy. All that mattered was this: his family in his arms, his friends beside him, the sun warm on his face. He had kept his promise, he had come home. And somewhere in the honor archives of humanity, his name was now etched forever, a reminder to everyone who came after, a lesson written in sacrifice and courage. Humans never abandoned their own. This was their gift. This was their strength. This was what made them special in a galaxy full of wonders. And Wu, the young cadet from who had just wanted to see the stars, had shown them all exactly what that meant.